Well, guess what? It's that time again. And let's just put up an image. May the 4th be with you. That is today, May 4th. And here we are, ready to dance into a new consideration for, what is this week going to have in store for us? This is, behind me, this is the current picture I went out and took this morning of the garden process that has basically tied me up for, the past month and a half anyway. It's coming. It's still a little on the chilly side here in Washington. You know, it's 50 degrees this morning. It was getting down into the low 40s overnight. I think it was 40 degrees when I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. We have a lot of plants started already in the greenhouse. We've put some bush beans out in this area here. You can see my cursor. These are potatoes all growing here. Strawberries growing inside this protected thing here to keep the animals out here. This will be pole beans and regular beans and peas and squash and cucumbers and etc. This is the corn area. All along the whole back area here is going to be sunflowers and broccoli, and we're just going with stuff. We've got a couple of artichokes going in here, some different flowers. Still a little cold. Haven't put any direct seeds into the ground here because of that. I like a little bit warmer soil. And we've been, fluctuating in between, get up into 70s, and then it'll go back down into the 50s and 40s and stuff. So, such is springtime here in the Northwest. Now, what the heck is going on? What kind of planetary things? Even as I sit and contemplate on the celestial dance, shall we call it, that the other planets around us are doing, I sometimes wonder, are we really necessarily paying attention to what it is that those other celestial bodies are doing? For the most part, probably not. And I say this because not everybody, and a lot of you on this wavelength, really tuned into astrology. I was tapped on the shoulder back in '69, and there was something intriguing about this tool or art that I was drawn to quite specifically. It says, how is it? And that, there could be some kind of connection between these planetary beings, something that I've learned to refer to them as, and us here doing this earth dance here on, our wonderful pearl in space. And through time, investigations, questions, doing chart readings for people and stuff, and I thank you all for being on that wavelength, those who I have accomplished this chart dance with, to recognize that there indeed is some rather dynamic connection between us as soul beings here trying to evolve that soul awareness on planet Earth and our collective or celestial surround that we find ourselves in, which is only, one part of the celestial dance, shall we call it, that our soul is always in tune with. But do we really know that? I look each week to see, what is the significance of this planet or that planet in an aspect to this other planet or this particular sign of the zodiac that they happen to be in, and what is the conversation that they're having with one another that might prove of assistance to me to be aware of. And each one of us astrologers is going to tune into that based on the particular historical life dance that we have gone through as a way to interpret, if you will, what this particular configuration celestially might have in store from our perspective. And if this intrigues you, then, great. If not, well, then don't pay too much attention to it. This week, let's go over and take a look at our chart. So this week, on Monday, tomorrow, because today is May the 4th, be with you. Pluto, which has entered Aquarius permanently now for the next 20 years or so, goes retrograde. And you kind of say, well, every year Pluto's going to go retrograde. And almost, actually, every year, every one of these planets goes retrograde in, part of the annual dance of the planetary experiences. Well, Pluto going retrograde right now, it's the only planet that is retrograde. And what does it mean when a planet goes retrograde? It means a lot of different ways to look at this, but if you consider that a planetary energy is a representation of some kind of force that is saying, I am giving you an opportunity to utilize the energy perspective of what I represent as a planet to throw into the matrix, if you will, of what the conversation from a celestial perspective is that you, remember, may or may not decide to tune into. Well, the Plutonic energy, smallest of those orbiting planetary bodies around us, packs a wallop. Yeah, little old Pluto out there, way out there, just before the Kuiper Belt. And some say maybe it's part of the Kuiper Belt planetary experience. Be that as it may, Pluto packs a punch. It has, assumed an affinity with the sign of Scorpio. So therefore there are secrets, there are mysteries, there's shamanic stuff. There's the life, death, rebirth cycle. These are all scorpionic considerations. So wherever Pluto is, it's taking those considerations and saying, how can I best play with that while I'm in a particular sign? So right now, it's in Aquarius. Will be for the next long while, through the rest of my life. Most likely, unless I live to be very, very long in the tooth, this experience of expressing, and affinity with humanity. This is very much an Aquarian consideration that are there factors in play in the human dance where secrets, mysteries, the shamanic stuff, the life, death, rebirth cycle may be triggered in unique fashion. From the Aquarian perspective that says that, how is it that I can utilize a perspective of what does it mean to engage with those on my wavelength and bring into that melting pot, if you will, these factors that Pluto can be very, very intense. There's an interpersonal, possibly physical, almost intimate kind of nature to it in play with how we engage with one another when we come together in group fashion. As I was going through the shamanic drum circle of this last week, the Woodstock song was playing so adamantly in my consciousness that I had to bring it up. And right now, because of here in the United States where I am, political turmoil that is afoot at the sociological, economic, and other levels, is the reason that I suspect that Woodstock song has come to me. By the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong. And if you think back to what was going on in those 60s when this was taking place, there was something out of balance in how it is that we, as a group, were interested in redefining our position here as human beings on planet Earth that needed some recalculation as to why is it that we're here. The time of the war going on with Vietnam and stuff, which was quite obvious to a lot of us as a manipulation, if you will, of resource allocation on this planet for our benefit. We wanted what it was that South Vietnam represented in its resource base to make sure that our, our desire for certain things might be supported at an economic level that was reasonable, cheap, in other words, for us Americans. Well, jump ahead 50 plus years to now, and there is once again a concern for the imbalance in what it is that the global marketplace actually represents. And the stirrings of the energy that is afoot right now are more of a reminder to us of our connection to what it is that the global marketplace represents. We are all on this planet, and there are no options beyond it that we can draw upon. This is an aspect of that Aquarian side, and Pluto's, rather focused and intense, looking at, yeah, there is the life-death process that is afoot near the surface. There are aspects of mystery and secretness as to what is real and what is manipulated, what is, one of those current terms that's being bandied about, aspects of, truth and partial truth and outright lies that, filter down through the media from all kinds of sources that we have to ferret out which is correct, which is going to benefit, and at what level, what it is that I understand that being alive as a soul being is about. And this Pluto stirring up the Aquarian zone of experience is asking us some very deep and profound questions as we become aware that in true Plutonian fashions, it's digging up secrets as to what really is going on in this life dance. Who is in charge and what is the purpose of that being in charge process? And am I willing to go along with it? Or do I see options that might be just a little more dynamic and perhaps have a longevity factor for the life cycle of humanity? Not minor considerations. Now, Pluto turning retrograde now, right here at the beginning of Aquarius, is saying, don't jump in too fast in trying to evolve this consideration, because there are factors that are in play and will be in play for a long, long cycle of footprint. And layers of this are going to surface for us to consider. When a planet goes retrograde, it says, okay, Pluto came into Aquarius, the vision, potential for what an Aquarian Pluto represents, hits probably rather dynamically. Now the pullback of this retrograde is saying, have patience in what it is that is really going on when we gather together, because there are factors that are going to unfold and it's going to take a while, and we will discover aspects of it when we engage with one another and ask questions. So this Pluto retrograde cycle, good time for asking questions about, why is it as a soul being, which we all are, that I came to experience the process of being with each and every one of you. On this very same day, Mercury here, down in Aries, is forming a semi-sextile. No, it's a sextile to Jupiter down here in Gemini. Well, Mercury, it rules Gemini. Jupiter always means, how can I grow, enlarge, expand, and experience? Mercury, how we communicate in Aries, you can possibly feel a rumbling kind of energy that wants to, I almost get the picture of, like at the Kentucky Derby that happened this last weekend, the horses, there's an agitation there, and they really want to charge out of that gate, and they did. Oh, and such a muddy sight it was. so wet there. But Jupiter is saying, go for it, go for it, go for it. Mercury in Aries, what thoughts possibly might be seeking audience at this time that perhaps you've been holding back on? And, Jupiter in Gemini is saying, don't hold those thoughts in. There is something quite dynamic afoot that we should probably pay attention to. Well, the thing that I particularly see afoot that does require some level of voice is and I've always kind of hint at this, or if I don't make it seem so obvious, the position that the American, or that America represents globally, is due for some modification. In a way, we have ridden our horse almost in a roughshod fashion upon the rest of the globe, seeking to make our lives better. There is a cost, and the cost is to the natural resource world. And we're in the Taurus season right now, which has everything to do with that natural resource that planet Earth represents. And we in America, in a way, we've worked ourselves into a corner where we want everything as cheap as possible, and at the same time, our wage scale is one of the highest in the world. And yet, there are factors in play that even that is not quite enough to keep up with the cost of what it is to purchase things for something as basic as survival for a substantial portion of our population. This level of imbalance between the haves and the have-nots continues to widen as a disparity between these two aspects that is in play politically, economically, globally, if you will, that the current administration is bringing to point. They may not necessarily perceive this in quite the same way as what it is that I'm painting as a picture for you, but there's a requirement, comeuppance, if you will, that the modern, technologically advanced cultures on the planet will not effectively be able to run roughshod over the rest of humanity. And that experience brings a lot of things to point. There's that Pluto intense energy in Aquarius saying, Are you looking at what it is you're considering in a way that benefits humanity or not? Because if you are not, the wave of change energy that is afoot right now, it's been 250 years since Pluto was last in Aquarius, not counting the recent visitation last year. And that was a pretty revolutionary time 250 years ago. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that revolution is the answer. No longer might we be, let's say, throwing tea overboard from the ships in the harbor. But there is some tariff issues that, have our lives just perhaps a wee bit more discomforting now than we're used to. And the writing on the wall says that in the short term, this is not going to necessarily get any better. There's a move afoot politically to try to take us back in time to, when things were different, theoretically better and stuff. Well, I'm not entirely sure that that is a reality that we should pay attention to. I do believe that there is the potential for a better reality going forward from here, but it's going to be a pretty substantial change from what it is that we are used to. The whole idea of a limited resources available for lifestyles is up for reconsideration. There is enough resource base around for a more profound and different lifestyle. It's just that a lot of the resources have been sequestered away from the majority of humanity and are being held in a tight package by a very small contingent of humanity. And because of this, the rest of us are attempting to survive. Things happen as I'm talking. Taurus, the season that we're in, one of the key words for Taurus is survival. The experience of being in tune with, or not, with Mother Earth and its resource base is very much a Taurian thing. As I look at this Monday, the sun right there in the dead heart center, 15 degrees of Taurus. Taurus is a sign that appreciates comfort and a resource base that provides well. We have that capacity. However, there are aspects of how we engage with others in this life dance that are afoot right now, saying there is a better or a more effective utilization of the natural resource world that is meant to be shared. And in the season of Taurus, that potential for tuning into Mother Earth. It's closer to the surface. As this week goes, we haven't even gone past Monday yet. As the week goes, I'm checking out factors that I have written all around me. It's not until the 10th, so the weekend, that the next aspect that showed up for me was our Mercury. Remember, we were talking about Mercury has shifted from Aries into Taurus. Now, whenever a planet shifts signs, the energy quotient of the arena of wherein that energy is in play shift with it. In Aries, the mercurial drive was to say things, to make an impulsive kind of action with our words and stuff. Mercury shifting into Taurus this coming weekend says, I might ask us, in your adamant verbiage that has been driving you as Mercury was doing its dance through Aries, might you have ruffled a feather or two? And now, this weekend, as Mercury moves into Taurus, perhaps, just perhaps apologies may be required for words spoken in haste, maybe? That the Jupiter pushing Mercury to say things that maybe weren't exactly quite ready yet, erupted off your tongue. And the process of trying to see my household is getting a little bit more activated. Hopefully you can't hear it in the background. Oh darn, I just discovered that I had my microphone way up on top of my head. Hopefully you've been able to hear this. Anyway, Mercury entering Taurus right now. There is perhaps a perspective of awareness that says, I need to chill a bit. I need to actually understand that the weight of what my words represent is going to, be in tune with the natural world that I, as a soul being, know I am a part of every part of it. It is a part of me. Every part of it is a part of me. One of the parts of that Woodstock song was that we are stardust, billion-year-old carbon. This is what we're made out of. The infinite connection that we have to all of the cosmos. These are part of the process and the experience of, why it is that astrology is still so intriguing to me. The conversation that I have with my planetary being host are making sure that I don't fall asleep in the midst of some very dynamic and important factors that are on the table for consideration. So that is essentially the things that come to mind today to bring us to make sure that as we're doing this story and dance right now, the Venus factor. Let's see, go back to that chart again. We're still in. Oh yeah, Venus is still in Aries. Venus is still very close to Neptune. I mentioned this last week as well. Making sure that there is clarity when we get into considerations of how we get along with one another, because the potential is from that Neptunian Venusian co-dance that is afoot in Aries is for us to not see clearly what it is that the other is bringing into the equation. Aries isn't necessarily one of those signs that listens very well, because the drive to do is often so strong that it muffles the process of what it is that others are trying to bring for our consideration. This is still afoot this week. And that Venusian Neptunian dance is saying, take the time to really listen to one another, because there is likely an aspect of yourself that has just been waiting for that right enhancement moment that others bring for your consideration, that are there and may be gone in the next moment. There's that Aries thing. Things come and go quickly. So pay attention. Enjoy each other's company in a way that isn't in an all-fired hurry to be somewhere that you're not. What is that? Be where you are at. Discover, from a Taurian perspective, the rootedness of what it means to have your feet firmly planted on the ground. Be in touch with all the aspects of this planetary being that we are a part of, every aspect of it. So, I think that's about all I have for this particular week. And love one another. Do that Taurian Venusian thing. Love one another and all of life, as we are all in this dance together. Ciao for now.